The Livestock Reconciliation Report in AgriWebb is an essential tool for tracking the movement and management of your livestock from entry onto the farm all the way through their sale. This report tracks information from your purchases, sales, deaths, transfers, and natural increase records. This report can support your operation by helping you understand your livestock numbers, ensure accurate record keeping by providing a clear overview of starting and closing livestock numbers, and simplify your audit preparation by consolidating all your livestock transactions. Next, a AgriWebb team member will dive into the report into more depth.
Here is a quick video on interpreting the Livestock Reconciliation Report so that you can understand what each column is referring to and which information it's pulling from the records that you're applying on your day-to-day operations on AgriWebb. First things first is go into the Reports tab and scroll down to the Livestock Reconciliation Report. And this will take you into your reconciliation report. The first thing is to adjust your date range to what you're wanting to look at here, whether or not you're wanting to look at your livestock reconciliation on a monthly basis, or if it's quarterly or annually, you can adjust your date range as you see fit here. You've got these few options up the top here, or you can manually select specific dates that are relevant in your instance. You then also have the option down here to customize your columns. Now this gives you the option of selecting what you wish to see in this report, whether that's from all of the column headings that you'd like to see across the board. As you can see here, if I don't want to see my farm, I can just deselect my farm, save that here, and you'll now see that farm has disappeared as the column. So now all I've got is my type, breed, age class, etc. as I move across. Now looking at the actual report itself, the main columns to consider here are your starting head. So on the time frame that you've specified in your date range at the top here, this will show you how many head were in that mob at the start of that time period. You then also get a total down the bottom, which should be the total on farm at that time. You then also have your bought column. So if you had any stock that were bought, these will be reflected in here, as we were saying with when putting your purchase records in. Once you put your purchase record in, those numbers will then show up here in your bought column. You've also got your bred column. So when you're putting in any of your marking records, they'll show up here. For example, you can see down here with where I've got 22 bred. This is my mob of heifer calves. I had 0 at the start of this time period, so they've been bred within the period of time that I've got specified up in my date range at the top. The next step is the looking at the aged in and aged out columns. So this refers to if you have any, say, weaning records or other records that are associated with adjusting the age class of those mobs. You can see here, for example, with these purple tag bull weaners, they were bull calves age class when they came into this time frame here. So you can see the 5 were aged out, and then you can also look down here and compare that with the 5 that were aged in. So this is just reflecting that this mob was weaned from a mob of bull calves up to a mob of bull weaners. So you can start to track your mob's progress as an aged in, aged out perspective there. The next step here is looking at the management tag fields. So this is if you're adjusting the management tag for any of your mobs, you'll see the reflecting numbers in here as well. Similarly, when you move on to the next column, this is any sale records. They'll pull through here to show the number of heads sold. You then also have the number of head condemned. So this is if you lost any during transport from that sale record. And then the next step from there is looking at your deaths. So this is if you put any death records in. So you can look down here, for example, and see that I had a death record attached to this mob here. So when you look across here, you can see it was my mob of Angus heifers, started with 15 head, had the 1 death, so there's 14 head remaining as of the current date or the end of the time frame that you specified. The next column here is edits. So this is if you're doing any recounts of your mobs. So say you had a mob of 50, but you accidentally misinterpreted that, and when you actually went back in and counted them in the paddock, there was only 49. You'd go in and put a recount. So that's where that will show up in the livestock reconciliation. That will be in the edits column. Finally, you've got your transferred on and off. So if you've got multiple farms on the account and you're transferring stock between them, you'll be able to see which stock is related to those records, such as your transfer records, in these 2 columns here. And then the final column is just your closing head, where you can see, what the closing number is in that mob at the end of the specified time frame that you've put at the top. The next option that you then do have is playing around with the grouping columns here. So you can actually start to group your stock here. For example, if I wanted to group them by age class, you can see now it's going to give me my subtotals of my livestock reconciliation report for each of my age classes. Here is my bull calves, bull weaners, bulls, calves, cows, etc. As you go down through, it'll group them as their age class is input. The other options that you have here is if you wanted to group by mob, you can group by breed. You've also got type, so that's if you wanted to group by bull, cattle, ram or sheep, for example. You also have the option to customize columns. If you didn't want to look at it at a mob level, for example, you could deselect that and it'd just show you at an age class level. So you can see what your totals here are. So you do have an option to play around a bit with what fields you do want to have shown here. Again, if the breeding isn't relevant to you, if you're just a trading operation, you can deselect bred. You can also deselect aged in or aged out if you don't want to know what that comparison is with your age classes, and save that down. And you'll see that those columns will now no longer be present in the livestock reconciliation report. So you do have a bit of freedom with what you want to show on this report. And then finally, say you're adding your mobs back in. If you just wanted to look at, say, a specific group, you could just search up the top here and say bull calves, and it'll only show you bull calves. So this is another option to the grouping. If you just want to specifically look at, say, one mob or one age class, you can search that in this filter column, and it'll bring you down to just those ones present on that report there. Hopefully that covers a bit of the information that you can get from the livestock reconciliation report and gives you a better understanding of how you can interpret the information that's actually coming into this report.